Since it's important, I'll say it first. Hand over all the money.
What? Money? Seeing my confusion, my sister-in-law Michelle sneered at me.
I'm going to manage the money. Don't get ahead of yourself just because you're his wife.
What does someone who has not visited this house for 10 years have to say now?
Are you planning to disobey?
The moment I saw Michelle smirking with that nasty look on her face, at that moment, something inside me, which had been tightly wound since my husband's death, snapped with an audible sound. Obey her? There's no way I'll let this selfish woman take my precious money and time. She'll regret this. My name is Amy. Last week, on my 65th birthday, my husband John's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse, and he passed away. Since then, I've been so busy that I haven't even had time to mourn, and today is finally his funeral. I stare at John's smiling photo. I can't believe this happened so suddenly. I remember a conversation we had not too long ago. He talked happily about how we should start walking to enjoy travel during our retirement, how he wanted to get better at cooking, and how he wanted to take up photography again, which had been his hobby. We never doubted we'd continue to live our lives as usual. My tears almost welled up, but I took a deep breath. I can't stay depressed forever. I can't make him hesitate on his journey because of my sadness. I'm sure he must also be worried about his mother, who has lived with us for years. But I'll take care of her, just like always, so he shouldn't worry. Still, going before his mother, what an unfilial son. My mother-in-law, Susan, has mild dementia. She often repeats old stories, forgets things, or mistakes people. It's like she's gone back to her childhood, sometimes daydreaming or acting selfishly. Her legs and back are bad, so she needs help changing clothes and using the bathroom, but after 7 years of caring for her, I've gotten used to it. Life with just the two of us will probably be lonelier than before. Maybe I'll ask her to tell me stories of my husband's childhood when that time comes. After the funeral was completed without incident, I finished the remaining paperwork and cleanup, and my bereavement leave ended. I returned to my usual routine of caring for Susan, doing housework, and working part-time. John was always naturally present, as if it was the most normal thing, and he was a quiet man. That's why I still don't feel any significant change. On the other hand, when I offer flowers to John, now reduced to a small box, the loneliness overwhelms me. Susan seems to be acting normal, but I think she must be even sadder than I am. She talks to my husband in her memories while looking through an old photo album we pulled out of the closet. On the days I work part-time, I rely on a helper to take care of Susan. It's only twice a week, but it gives me some pocket money and a chance to take a breather. It keeps my mind off things more than staying at home all the time. After going back to work after a long time, finishing my usual tasks and shopping before it got dark, I came home. When I got back, I realized it. Shopping as usual left too much food. John was a big eater. Cooking doesn't feel as rewarding anymore. Again, the loneliness crept up on me. I'm home, I said quietly as I entered the house. It was so soft that Susan couldn't hear, so there was no response. Just as I thought that, a cheerful woman's voice came from inside the house, throwing me off.
Welcome back.
The helper should have locked the door when she left, so who could it be?
Hello, Amy.
Michelle? It was my sister-in-law, Michelle. It seemed she had used a spare key to get in. Who gave her a spare key? This had never happened before, so I thought it might be an emergency, but apparently it wasn't. Because she was relaxing and watching TV. I felt a surge of discomfort at the sight. What is she doing barging into someone else's house without permission? Why'd you come over without any notice? I'm not usually the type to speak before thinking. But I couldn't hold back my emotions, and it came out sounding sarcastic. Michelle answered, looking annoyed.
Do I need to give notice to come back to my own parents' house?
Of course you do. I wanted to say that, but I held my tongue. No need to cause any more trouble. She's more than 10 years younger than John, still in her late 40s, and to put it nicely, she's lively and sociable. She probably thinks of herself that way, but to me, she's just loud and careless. Because of her personality, she got along very poorly with her late father. When she left home to get married, she left on bad terms, even cutting ties with her family, and she didn't even attend her father's funeral 5 years ago. I still don't know what she found so displeasing. But I clearly remember her suddenly showing up at John's funeral recently, loudly reminiscing with her old friends and relatives. I'd heard rumors that she's reckless with money and even has debts that her husband doesn't know about. I can see that.
Amy, where have you been?
Work.
You left Mom here alone? Locking her in a room all by herself.
Michelle gave me a look of disbelief. What a terrible way to put it. I didn't lock her in or anything. I had the helper come while I was working. She should have just left a little while ago.
What is this? Paying a helper while you go to work? Does that make any sense? Ridiculous. Instead of going to work, why not just take care of Mom yourself?
I was at a loss for words at such an unexpected comment. I've managed to balance my part-time job and caring for Susan for years now. And now she says this, after leaving home so dramatically when she was younger? Michelle noticed the dissatisfaction on my face and let out an exaggerated sigh.
I thought it must be tough now that John's gone, but you're already back at work. You really are cold-hearted, Amy. You're just dumping Mom's care on someone else because you don't want to be here?
What? Michelle looked at me coldly. She kept pressing me even more as I became increasingly unsettled.
John would be heartbroken if he knew. You're abandoning your responsibilities as his wife. How could you?
Being told all this, I couldn't help but feel anger rising within me. I'm trying to face the reality that my husband's gone. Would she be satisfied if I just stayed home and cried?
Now that John's gone, I don't feel comfortable leaving this house and Mom in your hands, John's wife.
I tilted my head in confusion. Sure, my husband is gone, but we're already living on pension, and we have some savings, so as long as I don't get extravagant, I can manage fine. Besides, I've been taking care of Susan for 7 years now. Michelle's words are out of line.
Hey, since I went out of my way to come here, hand it over already.
Michelle suddenly showed me her palm. What?
What do you mean, what? Give me my share.
I was even more confused. Did I have something to give Michelle?
I'm John's sister. Half of his inheritance is mine, isn't it?
Half? Michelle smirked. Is this a threat? Well, I think you're misunderstanding, but you don't have any inheritance share.
What do you mean?
What I mean is, it's strange for a sibling to inherit anything. Even though we don't have kids, Susan is still alive, so there's no inheritance for siblings.
Is that so? But this house should be mine, right? Mom has an inheritance share, doesn't she?
But Susan is still alive.
What are you saying? She won't stay healthy forever. When that time comes, it'll be my house, so you shouldn't stick your nose in it.
Whether Michelle understood it or not, the fact is that this houses will never be mine. It's solely in Susan's name, and it never belonged to my late husband, so it won't ever be mine. Greedy as she is, Michelle is closer to having a claim. When my father-in-law passed away, Michelle gave up her inheritance. She didn't get along well with him, and besides, he had some debts from his business. At that time, Michelle had said,
I'm not taking any inheritance. I know there's debt from the business. You just want me to pay up because I married into a wealthy family, don't you? Not gonna happen. I'm married now, and it's none of my business.
Since John also gave up his share when his father passed, Susan inherited the house and the debt. It wasn't a huge debt, and John was able to pay it off on her behalf afterward. Anyway, just because John has passed doesn't mean Michelle has any inheritance rights. When I patiently explained this, Michelle's face grew more and more sullen. At that moment, Susan called out to me from her room. Probably needed the restroom. I gave a word to Michelle and headed to Susan's room. After helping her in the restroom, I returned to the living room with her, only to find Michelle was gone. Feeling something was off, I looked around her room and noticed that several of the antique vases Susan had cherished and collected over the years were missing. Since when? I didn't see it happen, but it could only have been Michelle who took them. I can't make sense of this. She said whatever she wanted, and when she realized she wasn't getting any inheritance, did she take Susan's collection as payback? I don't want to believe it, but there's no one else.
Amy, what's wrong?
Susan asked, noticing my demeanor. I forced a smile to keep her from worrying. Michelle was just here. Well, it seemed like she was worried about you and me. I wrapped my response in a thick layer of sugar coating, but Susan seemed to see through it.
Oh, really? I wanted to see her. If she comes again, make sure you tell me.
5 days later, Michelle showed up again. Of course, it was unannounced. And today, she even showed up with a moving company, stacking a ton of boxes in front of the house. What? Michelle, what are all these boxes? It seemed Michelle couldn't hear my panicked voice as she continued giving instructions to the movers.
Put the heavy stuff inside the front door. There's an elderly person here, so keep it quiet.
Wait a minute, you can't just do this without asking. I stopped the movers from entering the house and stood in front of Michelle. What do you think you're doing?
Isn't it obvious?
No, it's not.
Keep your voice down. What if Mom hears you?
Michelle gave me a sharp look. If she's worried about her hearing, it must mean she knows she's doing something wrong.
Did you lock Mom in her room again today?
Of course not.
I doubt it.
Anyway, what is all this? Michelle sneered at my frustration.
I told you before, right? I can't trust the house and Mom to you.
Even so, this is obviously.
Exactly. As you guessed, I've moved in.
What about your own house? Then Michelle said something unbelievable.
I got divorced and came back.
What?
It's only natural, considering the importance of this house.
I had no idea what she was talking about. She came to John's funeral with her husband. When did you get divorced?
Just last week.
Why?
I already told you, for the sake of this houses.
Since I couldn't understand it at all, I went through it step by step. So you're moving into this house?
Yeah, obviously.
Well, does that mean you're going to take care of Susan?
What are you talking about? That's your job, Amy.
Then, are you going to help with the household chores?
Why would I do that?
Then, are you going to earn money to replace what John used to bring in?
That's impossible.
There couldn't be any reason for Michelle to get divorced. She had a wealthy and kind husband, so she shouldn't have had any complaints. My head was spinning. I needed to calm down. Living with Michelle in this house would be absolutely impossible. Actually, it's just out of the question. Where did you take Susan's collection of vases? When I asked, as if remembering, Michelle answered without any sign of remorse.
I sold them. I needed moving funds.
What?
What's the big deal? I can do whatever I want with things in my own parents' house, can't I?
What? I was so taken aback that I couldn't find any word. That's right, I should go call Susan. She told me to always do that when Michelle came over. But before I could, Michelle noticed and stopped me.
Wait a minute.
What?
I'll tell Mom myself, so just keep quiet.
Huh?
It'd be better if I explained it instead of you.
But
If you understand, help move the stuff in.
the place Michelle chose was my husband's study, which I had only halfway cleaned up. Michelle, wait. I don't want you to put anything in this room. I refused, but Michelle didn't care at all.
What? Are you daughter-in-law living in my parents' house, trying to tell me what to do?
She continued carrying her stuff in without a care.
This room is perfect. Great sunlight.
Michelle marched right into John's room. My chest tightened. Sure, this may be your parents' house, but it's also the home I've cherished for decades. You can't just show up unannounced and expect me to accept it.
Since it's important, I'll say it first. Hand over all the money.
What money?
Yeah, all the money in this house is.
My confused mind went into further panic. All of it? What are you talking about? You were mistaken before, saying half of it was yours, and now what? Michelle sneered.
I couldn't believe I didn't get a share, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Since I'm back and I'll be managing the house and the money, it's only natural that I get everything, right? Don't act high and mighty over me, his sister, just because you're his wife.
What? Hearing Michelle's self-centered reasoning made even less sense to me.
If you don't want to obey, then you can leave, for all I care.
The moment I saw Susan smirking with that nasty look on her face, at that moment, something inside me, which had been tightly wound since John's death, snapped with an audible sound. There's no way I'll let this selfish woman take my precious money and time. I responded calmly. Got it. I have no intention of obeying you. I'll leave this house right away. Michelle's smile vanished at my firm attitude.
What about Mom?
Just like you said, I'm only John's wife, so I won't meddle anymore. I'll leave her to you.
What? How cold can you be?
Look who's talking. You've ignored Susan all this time.
Who do you think you're talking to? Apologize now.
I ignored her and quickly packed my things. Then I went to Susan's room on the first floor, opened the door, and said loudly, "Susan, I've been told to leave, so I'm doing just that." Susan looked at me, bewildered, as I spoke quickly. "Michelle will be taking care of this house." With that, I stormed out of the house. Michelle was yelling something, but I absolutely refused to turn back. She knows nothing, always doing whatever she wants. She'll regret it. 1 week later, I had 50 missed calls on my phone. I couldn't answer because I was in a meeting. Just as I was about to call back, the phone rang again. "Hello."
Is this Amy?
"No."
Aren't you my sister-in-law, Amy?
"You must have the wrong number. I don't have a sister-in-law."
Cut the nonsense. Please help me.
"Help you? Me?
Yes, we're family, aren't we?
Help? Family? Who?"
Don't mess with me.
I answered calmly to Michelle's shouting. "You want my help, don't you? What kind of attitude is that?"
No. Why are you saying such things?
I could hear Susan yelling in the background of Michelle's distressed voice.
After you're done with the laundry, start cleaning. Hurry up.
Hey, did you hear that? What do you mean, dementia? She's more energetic than ever.
"Oh, Michelle, didn't you know? Susan's dementia has gotten a lot better."
What?
"Of course you wouldn't know, right? You've been avoiding Susan for years now."
Avoiding her? No way.
A few years ago, Susan had severe delusions. She'd get angry, mess up her room, and even leave the house without telling anyone, getting lost. It was tough back then. I couldn't handle her alone, so John and I would have to bring her back together. It was around the time when Susan injured her leg and couldn't walk well, and everyone in the family was under stress. Ever since the helper recommended it back then, she's been playing online games daily.
Online games?
Yeah, it really seemed to suit her, and her dementia gradually improved. She's not just staying shut in her room, but gaming. Before I knew it, she was back to living a regular life, just like she used to. It makes me happy.
Gaming? I thought she was quietly staying in her room, but she's calling me every second, being demanding, giving me lectures. It's exhausting.
What? That can't be.
Amy, you've been dealing with all this the whole time?
How dare you refer to her like that? Who do you think you're talking to?
It seemed Susan had grabbed the phone.
Amy, thanks to you not relying on Michelle and having a helper come every day, I'm doing just fine.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm relieved.
So, how's it going? Is everything settled?
Yes, all done. I just finished the meeting. I'm ready whenever you are, Susan.
Great. Then let's get moving right away.
I returned home with only a small bag. There was no need for the big luggage I had when I left. When I got home, my mother-in-law greeted me.
Welcome back. I've been waiting.
Next to her, Michelle looked completely worn out. She seemed like a different person. It seemed Michelle had been thoroughly bossed around by Susan. By the way, Susan usually isn't like that. She must have wanted to teach Michelle a lesson for selling her collection without permission.
I'm exhausted. I'm going to rest, so take me to my room.
I took Susan to her room as she asked, and Michelle's attitude immediately changed.
Where did you run off to? Think about the situation I'm in. I have no place to go, so cooperate.
I tilted my head. Isn't that her own fault?
If you can't stay here, then it's the park and homelessness for you. You should be grateful just to have a roof over your head.
I tilted my head even more. Well, so what do you want exactly?
Think from the position of you. Her daughter-in-law handles the chores and caregiving. I, as a family, manage the money. Basically, it's an employment relationship, right? You're just a maid for our family.
I was so shocked I couldn't say anything. Maybe something was loose in Michelle's head. Wasn't she a wife herself until just recently? What did Susan say about us living together? When I asked, Michelle answered with a smug look.
She said to leave the house to me.
I see. Makes sense. I replied calmly, while Michelle gave me a puzzled look.
You're taking this pretty well. Were you prepared for this?
Yes.
Well, whatever. Since Mom said so, you understand, right? Hurry up and come back and do the chores and caregiving like before.
No.
What?
Just like Susan said, I'm leaving this houses to you, Michelle. Mostly for the cleanup.
What do you mean?
We're moving out tomorrow.
Moving?
Yes, I've been handling paperwork and preparations all the way up until today. If you don't leave soon, Michelle, you'll be trespassing.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Since Michelle didn't understand, I decided to make it clear. This house has already been sold.
What? How could you do something like that without permission? John would be heartbroken.
Yeah, he probably would be. He was looking forward to the move.
What do you mean?
I mean, John also agreed to sell the houses.
What?
We bought a senior-friendly condo, so Susan will be moving there with me.
Moving out?
Considering Susan and our future, a senior-friendly condo with accessible facilities is much better than a big house with a garden that's hard to maintain.
Wouldn't it be better to live comfortably for the rest of our lives?
Since John said that, both Susan and I, of course, agreed. I never imagined he'd be gone so soon, though.
No one told me.
What?
This is my family home. Isn't it wrong not to consult me?
The house belongs to Susan. We don't need the permission of someone who just barged in to live here. Honestly, that was a bit harsh. Michelle is technically an interested party since she's a presumptive heir of Susan's. But we thought dealing with her was far more troublesome. Susan may have mild dementia, but she signed a family trust, and John, who was entrusted with managing her assets, sold the house. This place already belongs to someone else. Michelle was trembling. Her face kept getting paler and paler.
Don't mess with me. Where am I supposed to live now? I've already filed for divorce.
Why don't you swallow your pride and ask your husband for forgiveness?
That's impossible. I said whatever I wanted and stormed out.
What exactly did you say?
That he's useless, earns a lousy salary, smells like old age.
The more I heard, the sorrier I felt for her husband. He was such a kind man, and she said all that to him?
Wait, hold on. So there's no money left from this house?
Right, most of it went towards the condo.
I counted on the money from this house when I got divorced. What am I supposed to do now?
What? I couldn't hide my shock. What in the world happened?
I mean, what kind of cheap guy complains over a little debt?
Debt?
Yeah, I'm better off without him.
Michelle's words filled me with disgust. I'd heard she was irresponsible with money, but I couldn't believe she'd abandon her family over it.
He took my cards and checkbook, and there's no use for a man like that.
A chill ran down my spine. To Michelle, everything seemed to boil down to money. And the debt probably wasn't a little either. Then Michelle suddenly had an idea.
Hey, since there's no other choice, let me live in that condo with you. I can take John's place, and it should be fine, right?
Michelle looked pleased, as if she'd come up with a brilliant plan. If she didn't understand what she was saying, I should explain it to her, step by step. You said I was just the maid for the family, right?
What?
I just wanted to confirm.
What about it?
I began to speak slowly. The condo is in Susan's name, so if she agrees, I can't say anything. But you're saying you want to live in a house that's no longer your family home?
What?
You also said to hand over all the money. Can you say that again? Michelle's face froze.
What? I never said that. You must have misheard.
I kept smiling as I answered. I think family is about supporting each other. It's wrong if someone has to endure to make it work. There's no way I'm spending the rest of my life enduring you, and there's no way I'm letting you use our money either. Michelle seemed so furious that she was at a loss for words. She ran into Susan's room, seeking help.
Mom, this woman is crazy.
Susan smacked Michelle's hand away as she tried to cling to her.
My legs might be bad, but my hearing's sharper than most. I heard everything. You've been awfully rude to Amy, haven't you?
What?
How can you say those things just because she's a woman married into the family? I can't believe it. Let me be clear. You've always been selfish, reckless with money, and impossible to deal with.
What, Mom? Isn't that a bit too much?
I was relieved when I thought you'd finally married a good man, but then you got divorced and came back. I'm really disappointed.
Disappointed? What are you talking about, Mom? Don't you want your daughter to be happy?
Susan let out a big sigh and said sharply,
Don't be so greedy.
What?
You think it's normal because you've always had him, but there's no one else like that man. No one else would put up with someone as clueless as you.
What? Mom, you've been going too far.
Get back to your husband, apologize, and ask to come home. That's the best thing for you.
My happiness?
That's right. You'll never find someone as good as him again. You'll regret it if you let him go.
Regret?
Susan knows Michelle's personality all too well and chose her words accordingly.
You can't compare a poor home with just an old lady and son's wife to that. If you get it, hurry up and go home.
That's Susan's words for her. For some reason, they carry a convincing force that makes you believe them. I'll give her one more push. Michelle, I think the sooner you apologize, the better.
Really?
I nodded deeply. Yes. Susan also spoke firmly.
Of course.
We should get her to leave before she changes her mind. Susan and I exchanged glances and nodded quietly.
Now, hurry up. If it's your husband, he'll understand if you explain things properly.
Don't worry, Michelle. I'll make sure to send your things back to you.
But do you think he'll forgive me?
Michelle seemed hesitant. Susan's face turned stern.
No buts.
Susan pulled out a piece of paper.
Write down your sincerity on this paper. Say you'll stop wasting money, you'll change your ways, and you'll never come back here again.
Why?
For your own good. I'll show this to your husband and explain things properly for you. But in return, you must make up with him, and you must never come back to us again.
All right. Thank you, Mom.
Susan was a little scary. Using both the carrot and the stick to control the situation, and even securing evidence. Now, Michelle wouldn't be able to rely on us anymore. By the way, I've heard Susan never loses in her online gaming matches. Michelle obediently left. Susan looked exasperated.
Even though we're family, there's no way I could take care of that girl now, nor do I want to. For a daughter, you're more than enough for me. I'll be counting on you from now on.
Susan gave me a shy smile. Of course, Susan. Let's spend our time together peacefully. Afterward, Michelle went back home right away and apologized to her husband, asking to reconcile.
I was blinded by John's inheritance and got divorced. How foolish of me. Please forgive me.
It was good that Michelle honestly apologized, but while she was away from home, other debts, as well as her affair, had come to light, and even her kind husband wouldn't forgive her. Then, for some reason, Michelle started blaming me.
Amy manipulated me. I was brainwashed.
There was absolutely no reason for me to manipulate Michelle. And how would I even go about brainwashing someone? Her husband was deeply disappointed in Michelle for her dishonesty and lies. Susan was supposed to help smooth things over, but given her inability to lie, she ended up revealing everything, including things that didn't need to be said. It seems there would be no reconciliation until Michelle paid off her debts on her own and changed her ways.
What? I'm humbling myself and apologizing here.
With that attitude, it'll never happen, no matter how long she waits. Susan and I successfully moved, and we're enjoying a comfortable life. The room that was supposed to be John's study has now been set up as a personal gym where we can get some exercise. It's nothing fancy, but it's nice to have something I can use every day at home. Games are fun, but you need to exercise too, or your body will get lazy, Susan.
What are you talking about? There are online games where you move your body to play now.
Really? You're well informed, as always.
You have to use both your mind and body in balance.
Am I the only one who feels like Susan is getting younger? She'll probably live a long life, and I can't afford to fall behind. I also think about the time when she will be gone. When that happens, this condo will belong to Michelle. I bet she's counting down the days until then. Susan even said she would make me her adopted daughter so I could inherit, but I don't want to have an inheritance battle with Michelle. If that day comes, I'll use John's inheritance and our savings to move into a retirement home. Although, judging by how Susan is doing, I don't think that day is coming anytime soon. Ironically, John's sudden passing made me reconsider my future life. What I should value from now on is the inheritance my husband left, my savings, and most importantly, my healthy body that allows me to keep working. Relying on someone else's money, like Michelle, is a scary way to live. If both my mind and body are healthy, most things will work out fine. I'll take responsibility for myself as I inevitably grow older. As I made this vow, Susan worked up a good sweat next to me while doing her exercises. Susan, I'll join you. Sorry to John, who might be waiting in heaven, but we plan to stick around for a long time yet.